So this is the first time we're instituting the BWW Short Story Award for the R.K. Anand Prize. The R.K. Anand Prize, guys, you can do better than that. Thank you. The R.K. Anand Prize is for, in memory of my father, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about him and a little bit about what BWW is for some of you who may not know. And then we'll get started on the actual ceremony where I'll introduce the winner and the prize distribution. And we'll hear the jury talk about what they thought of all the entries. And we're done. So, Papa, that's my father, Mr. R.K. Anand, he was a simple man, easily contented, ridiculously kind and giving. He had many faults too. He was human, after all. He was a compelling and extraordinary storyteller, the life of any party, and he did like to party. His stories were always witty, full of observation and mischief, characterized by his great love for people. When he worked at the Indian telephone industries, he started a circulating library for his friends. It was called Katha Sangama, and it ran for a couple of years before he donated all the books. He had the mind and spirit of an artist. The prize design is his only surviving work of art. My parents led by example and have always been non-traditional. Early on, Papa dropped the Shetty tag from his name because he didn't subscribe to clanism or casteism. And he remained a feminist till his dying day. We lost him to frontotemporal dementia and related complications in March 2023. One of the most painful symptoms for us was seeing him turn apathetic and cold instead of the empathetic and social man he was. But during the last week of his life, his empathy was miraculously back. He was on his deathbed at the Kites Palliative Center. He saw a grandfather being wheeled in after a broken hip surgery. He told us, "Poor man, he must be in so much pain." He never forgot to inquire if the staff serving him had eaten or had at least had their tea being his favorite drink. And he would be gone in 4 days. That's the sort of man he was. My parents have been averse to most religious practices, so it's only fitting then that Amma and I chose to honor him by instituting this award. I'm grateful that we're getting to celebrate his life and his principles this way. Oh, thank you. I hope that's not cue for telling me to stop, because I still have some more. Okay, so Philip Larkin, one of my favorite poets, said, you know this one. Any guesses? They fuck you up, your mom and dad. They may not mean to, but they do. And I completely blame my parents for this passion I have for literature, stories, and people. It's a controversial thing to be confessing at an esteemed lit fest, but I know this to be true. Literature fucks you up, or at least it makes your life rather difficult. We pursue it anyway because some of us, here especially, have no other way of living. Amma started on me early by telling me stories and asking for my opinions about every story she narrated. That was my first workshop experience. I became an intense, opinionated, questioning teen. I argued against rules and norms, particularly the limits set for young girls in our society. My parents supported me through it all. I gained a reputation. This is what reading and literature does to a person. And we know this. Societies don't appreciate nonconformists who question the status quo. Pretty dangerous. But definitely lit-worthy. So here we are today. I started BWW 12 years ago. I run it with the same core values my parents taught me. Delight and enthusiasm for stories, and appreciation for the written word, love and concern for people, that presence is deep listening, honest feedback tinged with kindness and empathy. These have helped us attract our tribe of incredibly talented writers and storytellers. I internalized this Be the Verse by Larkin and chose not to have any kids myself. But literature, as we know, is life-affirming. And so I inadvertently bred a community of some of the most gifted people I know. They've been published to acclaim and appreciation and have been nominated or are winners in most competitions in the past 12 years. We have Bashari here, who just won the runner-up in the Deodar Prize. But the best thing about the BWW community, and I think this is the most important thing, is that this is a group of some of the nicest people you will ever meet in Bangalore. And most of them are in the audience today, so I'd recommend you make friends. So, this coming together of community, the discovery and recognition of new talent, a very humble contribution to encourage a budding artist would make Papa happy. And if such things exist, I hope today's event will bring his soul joy. It certainly feels satisfying, if bittersweet, to Amma and me. None of this would be possible, of course, without Subodh and team from Matagalata. Is he? Who have been staunch mentors and friends for me. I also want to thank our esteemed jury, Janvi Barua ma'am, Shaukat Majumdar, and Indira Chandrasekhar for supporting this award. And the way they got the vision that we had for this award, so exactly right. It's incredible. Thank you so much. I really want to extend another round of gratitude to Indira for the Out of Print magazine, because a lot of the BWWers have been published there. And also that you're so enthusiastic to feature the winning story in the Out of Print magazine. Thank you so much. All the shortlisted stories for the BWW prize will also appear in the Out of Print blog. So all our stories are getting published. And we have to thank Indira for this generosity. Oh. And lastly, I really want to thank the BLF team for encouraging a small boutique school like the BWW. I also want to thank my designer friend, he's not with us today, Ruben Sampson, for everything he did. And of course, I'm eternally grateful to my BWW community. You're my babies, and thank you so much for making it today. And my friends and family, it means a lot to me that all of you are here, so thank you so much. And a big thank you to all those who participated and trusted us with their work. We received a total of 174 entries. Okay, this is important. I have something to say to all the nominees. Good luck, first of all. And the stories that we have shortlisted all have a very well-defined worldview, along with excellent craft. Please look forward to reading them on the Out of Print blog. And in my eyes, all of you are already literary stars, no matter who wins today. So please keep writing, please keep questioning, and please keep inspiring others. You're doing really good work. If I were religious, I'd say you're doing the God's work. Lastly, thank you all for listening to my story. I'm ever so grateful for this opportunity. Thank you so much for your support. It means the world to me. Thank you for being here. Okay, and now to the exciting bit. I'm going to announce the winner. So, the winner of the BWW Short Story Award for the R.K. Anand Prize 2024 is Vrinda Baliga for her story, Breakout. Congratulations. May I request Mr. Raghuram Baliga and Mrs. Usha Baliga to please collect the prize on her behalf. Sir, ma'am, if you could. Rinda lives in Hyderabad and she couldn't make it today. May I request the jury to please. The winner hamper?
Thank you very much. Thank you for your initiative.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. It's a beautiful story. You must be so proud.
Thank you.
We'll just take a picture. Sir, one sec. We'll just take a picture. Thank you so much. Thank you. You don't have to invite the winner to talk because she's not here. Yeah. No. Congratulations to Rinda. The winning entry will appear in the December 2024 edition of the Out of Print magazine. You can look forward to that. All the other nominated shortlisted entries will appear in the BWW, in the Out of Print blog. Yeah, that's supposed to get me a round of applause. Congratulations to all the writers, and thank you, Indira, again. And now I will hand it over to our jury member, Shoikat, to please say a few words. But before that, we want to give him a thank you.
Well, I'm impressed I didn't drop any of that. So, well, thank you, Bhumika, for organizing this. It's a really unique thing because a short story is written in narrative prose, but it's actually very close to poetry. And it's this togetherness that actually makes it a very unique genre. And I think this a modern short story is very cinematic. You know, I think in the oral tale, this is how it's different from the older form where it could tell, it was very narrative driven, but the modern short stories, I always think of what Chekhov said, that, somebody asked Chekhov that, how do you write, where do you get your ideas of your short stories? And he said, put your cigarette on the ashtray and I'll write a story about it. So in other words, the modern short story writer doesn't really need a subject, a mark on the wall, a cigarette on the ashtray, and that really draws me. I think the modern literature is really distinguished by that. It can make the banal and the ordinary into the subjects of stories. And I started my writing career with short stories, with Pilal's Writers' Workshop. They brought out my collections. But my last 5 books of fiction have been novels, so sometimes I feel I'm a little far away from the genre I should qualified. But I think the short stories still remain my love in that I can see that my novels are quite short, sometimes of novella length. And because I also teach creative writing, one thing I always tell my students is that, good art is this endless tension between the alien and the familiar. People want to say that, oh, this character I know from my neighborhood, this is exactly how my father nags at me, but they also want to be shocked. So a good story both gives you the beauty of the familiar and gives you the shock of the alien. So I tell my students, when somebody finishes a story of yours, you want them to say, oh my God, I didn't see that coming. But on second thoughts, it makes sense. You don't want them to say that, oh my God, I didn't see that coming. Where did that come from? Nor do you want them to say that, oh yeah, I could see that all along. You want them to say both. So both the recognition of the familiar and the shock of the alien is what makes a good art. And that is something I really noticed in reading the stories. What really struck me was they all had really interesting, takes on life. I mean, one thing that stood out to me that many of the writers were women. They wrote about everyday life. And I think the kind of writing, I mean, those of you who know my work, that's kind of writing I'm interested in. I'm less interested in the big stories, partition, war, genocide. I read them, I respect them. But my favorite stories are always the stories of bedrooms, chai shops, classrooms, the kind of ordinary life. And that really resonated with me reading this. So just say a little bit about the stories I really enjoyed. The story Cold to Touch, I don't know, the writer is here, I love this story. This story is about this abiding question, are white people cold to touch? And this is exactly what I'm talking about. It seems so nonsensical, and yet it makes so much sense at the same time. Oh, they're white, they look cold, I've never touched a white person. And this person's life is driven by this question. This is the question she keeps asking. It's really interesting. There's a wonderful story called The Fall of Icarus. Immediately reminds me of that Bruegel painting and the Greek myth. But it's really about a subject that is very close to me teaching, because I'm also a professor, and the kind of radical possibilities, what happens when somebody who's far out, somebody who's not in a circle of privilege, sort of demands you. It's a kind of Drona-Ekalavi situation, which draws me as a writer as well. Matt is a story of rebel feminism about this young girl. And what is most interesting about this rebel feminism is that the feminism is directed equally as against women. And it brings out how patriarchy is not necessarily about men or women, it's an ideology. And women can be just as much an agent of patriarchy as men. And that shows how invisible that power has become. I thought the story brought it out really well. Of Bala and Me is a really striking story where this woman, she's in this marriage which her husband's family does not acknowledge. Oh, this is not a marriage, it's a kind of a progressive marriage. And what they do is they marry him again to another girl. And she's clearly a girl not from the same social class. And what is this woman's relationship with this second wife, who almost lives like a servant in the home? So very touching and very disturbing, very erotically intense, but also very profound at the same time. Reflection, again, is a story of quotidian life, something very close to me. It's a story of two women roommates, how their lives mirror each other, how one of them has a boyfriend and is getting intimate with her boyfriend. And obviously when you're in a closed, small apartment, the sense of intimacy travels to you very fast. And how her imaginative life translates with that. So I really enjoyed that story. Repast is a beautiful story. I mean, of course, when I read this story, I could taste the Mysore Pak. Of course, it's a dish which I eat with a lot of sinful, guilty delight. I could smell the ghee. It's a really wonderful story of community and cooking and women. And, nothing, touches me more than when a work of art is sensory. Because I believe in what T.S. Eliot said. Good poetry, unites the smell of cooking, the sound of typewriter, falling in love, and reading Spinoza, the olfactory, emotional, intellectual, and the auditory. And that is what we all like to do in good art. With thinking and feeling, it all happens together. And that is something I really took out of this story. So thank you, Bhumika, for giving me that experience. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. Yeah, beautifully done. Thank you, Shaukat. That's so beautifully done. And I hope you're excited to read the stories in the blog. It'll be up very soon. And now I'll pass it over to Janvi ma'am to say a few words.
Thank you, Bhumika, and thank you on this.
Thank you.
So to begin with, I'd like to thank Bhumika for this wonderful initiative.
Oh, thank you.
The short story has got very short shrift in fiction because I remember as Sharkot said, he started with the short story, so did I, and the market talk is that short stories don't sell. So yeah, and then youngsters feel disinclined to pick up the form and do anything with it. It's a myth. It's a myth, and we've lived it, so we lived through it, so we know that it's a myth. And it's my favorite. It's definitely my favorite form of fiction. It's a very hard form. I think only poetry is harder. Then it's fiction. Then it's short fiction. Then it's a novel. It's very hard to get a short story right, and you arrive at a short story not just with knowledge of craft. You have to live life to write that really brilliant, that hitting the sweet spot kind of short story. The one sent to us, I think, met most of the sort of parameters that a short story requires. And as Shoykot said, they came with a point of view, not the point of view we talk about when writing fiction, but a sense of a lens that the writer was looking at life with. And he's talked in detail about the story, so I won't go into it. When I read a short story, what strikes me, what makes it for me is if I'm moved at the end of it. At the end of it, it's a deep emotional connection that we're looking for with fiction, through fiction to other human beings, through other human beings to the world. And for me, when I'm moved by a short story, I know that it's sort of, it's there, it's made it. And beyond that, I would look at structure, at craft, and all the other things we look at. And I must say I enjoy the diamond needle the most. Something about it at the end of it, it was emotionally satisfying, it moved me. And when I looked deeper at the craft level, one thing I look at very often in a short story is it authentic? Is it contrived? Is it just written for the sake of writing to win a prize or just to put it out there, or is it really authentic? And this felt authentic to me. On the craft side, the technical aspects, the craft was authentic. It was set in Kerala and it met all it had a distinct flavor. It had the flavor of smells, of satisfying your eyes. You could see the village through it. And I love the use. See, this one, people don't realize it, but for us Indian writers writing in English, we have a big task. We already are in the first place translators, because we are already writing in a language which is not deemed to be ours, although I maintain that Indian English is an Indian language. It is our language. But when we write characters, it is so hard because that character will be speaking Gujarati, Konkani, Malayalam, and we translate it into English, and we don't want the reader to find that awkward. So I love it in this story how the author managed to get the flavor of Malayalam into the story. And he'd slip in a word where not for just to be exotic, but because that spot needed that word. I love his character building. He built it up slowly, the old man. He built up, she built up the story of the old man, the character of the old man, the vagrant, the homeless person who walks in. And I love the slow burn, the slow development of that relationship. And of course, a shock ending in a way. I think it sort of satisfied me fully at the end. So that was my favorite story, and the one Bhunimika said you must speak about. So it's a very human story. It is a very human story. And also in craft, very assured. It was very assured, very confident writing, and I enjoyed that. I think. Yep. On to
Well, I'm going to read because I have a dreadful, although I'm a short story writer, I have this ability to ramble on. Oh, sorry.
It doesn't matter though, but your names, if you want to present.
Thank you, Bhumika.
Thank
That's
you.
so nice
Thank
of you.
you.
Thank you so much. That's really lovely and so generous of you. Quite unnecessary.
No,
Just
it's
getting
just
this prize is lovely.
all the things that my dad liked.
Oh, how nice.
That's what's in the hamper. So yeah,
Oh, how nice.
so it's very small.
It's like a short story.
Yeah, I know.
Yes. Oh dear, are we out of time? We're out of time. I'm going to take my
That's
few
it.
minutes.
She
I have to
just has-
speak about the winning story.
Yeah. We started late though.
Please go ahead. Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to read because, well, as you realize, we're short of time, but I must say what a special treat it is to be part of the first Bangalore Writers' Workshop R.K. Anand Short Story Prize jury. It's a really very special, and along with Aragalata at the Bangalore Lit Fest, all these lovely confluences. Now, you've all heard from the other jurists about the wonderful stories that have been on the short list of this prize, and it made our selection very hard, I have to say. And also about the story by Shalini Vineet, which was the special mention. So it's my honor to speak to you about Vrinda Baliga's Breakout, which is the winning story. I just have to interject. I know I'm taking time, but since we're publishing the stories, I'm so pleased that both Shalini and Vrinda's stories have actually appeared, not these ones, but in the past have been part of the out-of-print journey. And so I feel really happy about that. And I also sort of think to myself, maybe we've been part of their writing journeys, so it's kind of nice. And so thank you for this opportunity. Now, I don't need to emphasize to any of this audience, writers, families of writers, supporters, literary aficionados, readers, about the power of the story. We write stories about ourselves, our communities, be they small units of family, be they larger ones of tribe. We write stories about society, stories of love, intimacy, power, injustice, oppression, identity. I mean, we've always been driven to write stories. Human beings, I think, have captured their histories, their observations, their experiences, their imagined worlds from the time we were nomadic wanderers, I believe. And I like to think that perhaps our creative ancestors were grappling with the meaning of existence and a larger universe and an enlightening structure within which to live. And I believe we still do that in many complex and nuanced ways. But at this point, we must sort of sit up and say something important, which is, in the context of this prize especially, which is somehow the difference between storytelling and writing a story, creating a literary rendition of a tale. For creating a literary rendition demands the refinement of a text, an ability to evoke an emotional immersion in the text, a crafting that transforms the story into art. In one of her last public addresses, sections of which have been reproduced and made accessible in marginalia, Susan Sontag, the American writer and feminist, said, "A great writer," or may I interject, all of us who are striving to be great, "a great writer of fiction both creates through acts of imagination, through language that feels inevitable, through vivid forms, a new world, a world that is unique and individual. At the same time, they respond to a world, the world that the writer shares with other people." In my opinion, Vrinda Baliga's Breakout does all of that. It creates a world, it responds to our world, and it crafts a fine piece of literature. The story responds to the immense pressure that our educational system imposes on children, on students, a system that emphasizes rote reproduction of learnt material over the development of imagination, critical thinking, and the joy of learning and knowledge. The story imagines a world directed by the new creature in our midst, AI, artificial intelligence. Is AI a thinking being or a rotary producer of information? Is it a savior or a monster? Is it a new manifestation of the patriarchy? The story is imbued with an underlying disquiet, an anxiety, a scary hopelessness that its very plausible characters must deal with. But then the plot reveals an underground resistance to mute acceptance and hints at the power of quiet, sustained rebellion, and the story cleverly lifts its readers into a space of possibility. So congratulations to Vrinda. Sorry we ran out of time. I'm so happy to be publishing it on the blog. And thank you, Bhumika and Mrs. Anand, for this.
Thank you all so much for coming. Sorry we took extra time, but we did start late. Thank you all, dear audience. Thank you so much for being here today for me. It's a great feat that I'm not tearing up. So huge round of applause to our great jury. They were fantastic. To Attagalata, to the Bangalore Lit Fest, and of course to Bangalore Writers Workshop. Well done. Thank you.